Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for this update on the next steps in our Reimagining Policing in Baltimore plan. Join me today are Mayor Scott, Deputy Commissioner of Operations Cherie Briscoe, Chief of Staff Eric Melanson, Dr. Kai G of our Data Driven Strategies team, and our Equity Officer Leslie Parker Blyther, who along with Director Graham Campbell led this effort internally for redistricting. Our team has been working diligently in order to make the biggest changes to district lines in more than 50 years. As we announced in May, Mayor Scott and the Baltimore Police Department have been working to redraw the geographic boundaries of the Baltimore Police Department's 9 police districts. The team's process involved an analysis of 5 years' worth of service data and more than 200,000 records of Part 1 crimes, as well as 2020 U.S. Census data at the neighborhood level, in accordance with BPD's Community Policing Initiative. Following a month-long public input process, we gathered and reviewed more than 400 responses, spoke to community members, and analyzed data related to calls for service, crime trends, high violence areas, and population changes to determine these draft boundaries. During this initial feedback process, what we heard repeatedly is that many of our residents think the current district boundaries are too broad, and among their top concern is keeping neighborhoods together. We have done our best to take all of this feedback into consideration. The result is updated maps of the newly proposed geographic boundaries that we will now make public for another round of feedback through July 28th. Once we close this round of feedback, we will again review and analyze all of the input from the public and community stakeholders before announcing the finalized maps. With this data-driven approach, the proposed boundaries create much more balanced workload, crime population, and overall geographic size between districts. With an understanding that the second public input process might bring new data and perspectives to the redistricting process, the team will adjust the boundaries as needed. I want to emphasize that the intent of redistricting plan is to, number one, keep neighborhoods together, and this map reunites 18 neighborhoods that were previously divided, manage the crime more effectively in each geographic area, create better alignment for the crime reduction strategy, provide officer workload balance for each district, and then optimize resource allocation for smarter policing. We intend to process the public's feedback and have finalized maps for the mayor to submit to the City Council by early August. During the process, and more than ever before, our agency is sensitive to the impact of historic redistricting of all types, especially in our city. Too often, redistricting has led to marginalizing communities of color and poor communities by limiting needed resources or representation. This is not the case. We recognize the genuine partnership built over time between our communities and our police department, and we will continue to work to build trust and relationships that were never built, improve on relationships, and finally repair broken relationships. Our department's equity office will also be a part of this process while we work to connect communities and ensuring that there is a collaborative communication and service as we transition into modernized policing districts. Members of the public can go to baltimorepolice.org/redistricting to view the new proposed map and submit second online feedback form. So thank you, and at this time I'll turn it over to our mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, and thank you everyone for being here. As the Commissioner said earlier, we are here today to discuss the next important step in our police redistricting process. We talk about population, workload, crime trends, and even individual neighborhoods that have changed dramatically over the past few years, and it's imperative that we redraw our districts to represent and serve those trends in the better way. As a councilman and even as a staffer, I've been working on this issue for the entirety of my time in city government, and I'm so pleased that we are here today. And as a councilman, I work with my Senator Corey McCray, to ensure that we were changing our districts regularly to account for our constantly evolving city. And as mayor, I am proud to be guiding this process along, following in accordance with the state law. Our current districts is very clear. fail to efficiently and adequately distribute police resources, and our residents have asked that we make changes to put our officers where they are most needed, and also where we can build relationships in a better and much deeper way. Our team has been hard at work at doing that. These maps have been informed by our residents, and when we present the final district maps to the council in August, I want us all to be reminded that it will represent the biggest change to our police districts in over 50 years. And it is crucial and very imperative that we get this right. This is why we called for input from our residents to inform our new boundaries, and why we're calling on residents again to provide even more feedback. Facilitating this community input throughout the redistricting process will allow us to modernize policing and transform BPD into a world-class law enforcement agency with and not for our residents. And that's something that we all can be happy about. When you see these proposed maps, you should know, again, that it reunites 18 neighborhoods, including my childhood neighborhood of Park Heights that was once split up into two districts. It eliminates the tri-district, which we know right now neighborhoods are served by 3 districts depending on what side of the street you're on. And of course, it makes the Northeast District much smaller, not having one district represent 20% of the area, and even only having one be that such in population. These are fair, they're balanced, and a great approach, and we look forward to hearing from our residents and their opinions so that we can move forward and finally set our police districts in the right and the most equitable way. Thank you, and now we'll take questions.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. How confident are you all that this redistricting process will lead to a reduction in crime, and what factors, what basis would you have on that?
A couple of things. I'll start first from a legal perspective, Alexa, just to remind us that this is a state mandated thing that we have to do every 10 years. And it's not just about, much like every 10 years you have to go through a council redistricting process, a congressional, a state legislative process, right? That's about how we are serving the residents based on population, violent crime, nonviolent crime, neighborhood boundaries. So it is much, of course, because we're talking about the police department, it's about how we impact crime, but it's also a state mandated thing based on population, how the city is changing. So let's start off there. But when you have more effective resources, allocated resources that are given out in a more balanced way, right? We'll just use the Northeast District, for example. When you have only one district that has over 100,000 people and it's 130,000 people and 20% of the area of the city, and no one else has that, you're not going to be able to effectively police. When you're policing off 1959's year census data, you won't be able to effectively police. When you're seeing here, what you see proposed here is how that we can make that a more balanced approach so that our commanders and our officers have a more balanced area to respond to, right? If you look at that map, you'll see that officers right now are going literally from the county line almost into the heart of East Baltimore to serve in the same area. You cannot effectively police in that way, and that's why we're doing this. And this, along with all the other things that we talk to you consistently about, are how we're going to work. This is one part of how we can set this police department up to be better at resolving, preventing crime in our streets. Mr. Commissioner?
Yep. The Commissioner on his confidence
Yeah.
level.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But to further elaborate on that, this is really focused on equalizing or levelizing the workload among officers across the 9 districts. Although everything we do is geared toward preventing and reducing crime, it really is about levelizing the work so that whatever is happening in one district is happening in all districts at the same pace. And it takes us one step closer to being a better police department at delivering police services, because we're not overloading one district while underserving another.
Hey, I was just wondering if you guys could talk a little more about, could you talk a little more about the importance of reuniting neighborhoods and how this new map will seek to improve conditions for historically underserved communities?
Yes, the thing we heard most, and I've said this, the mayor has said this, reuniting neighborhoods that were split because a major thoroughfare or a street went through a neighborhood, putting it in different districts, reuniting those neighborhoods so that those neighborhoods sit in one police district, and making sure we keep neighborhoods together. So in the redesign, we don't do this again by splitting up neighborhoods with redistricting. So we wanted to make sure we don't further split any neighborhoods and then reunite those that were split once before. That was one of the top concerns that we heard. We believe this will be an effective way to do that. And then it becomes the data-driven approach of how many officers are assigned to a district based on the data, based on the amount of people there, the amount of calls, the workload, and we can equalize that across all 9 districts.
And I would just add, the Commissioner's spot on, I would just add that when you think about it from a personal standpoint, right? So I grew up on the corner of Cold Spring and Pimlico. On one side of the street, I was in the Northern District. And the other side of the street, I was in the Northwest District. So if something, you know, especially in the land before cell phones, if something happened on the 2600 block of West Cold Spring and we ran back home and had to report that to the police, we're going to get a totally different, it's a confusion for folks. And you heard that from community leaders. I've heard that even from elected officials who represent those kind of areas. And when you think about the tri-district, that's 2. When you think about being in a neighborhood that you can be on one side of the corners of a street and be in 3 different districts, and the confusion that provides for people when they call for help or where they're trying to build relationships with a particular commander in a police district. This ends that practice for us and allows us to focus in on neighborhoods in a more in-depth way.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
Those are all of the questions on redistricting. We'll take it. You do? Okay.
So this is a personal thing. What is the justification of moving Ednor Gardens from the Northeastern District to the Eastern District?
I'll start. So we all know that the Northeast District size drove this process, right? But as we've said, and we've said many times, I've heard this from 2007 on to now, that if we're going to shrink the Northeast District, because the Northeast District's boundaries are the county, the Northern, and the Eastern, and the Northern's already big, we knew that the Eastern District was going to have to grow, right? So when you think about that and think about what we're trying not to do, when we're trying not to divide neighborhoods up, when you're trying not to have boundary lines that exist like some of the ones today, it makes the most sense when you think about geographically, when you think about the population, all of the things, the workload, all the things that we are required to look at by law. This is the most fair and balanced version of this that you're going to get.
Did you guys think of the partnership that some of the community organizations have with the police department? Because Ednor Gardens is only about 2 miles away from that district.
We absolutely thought about that. And what we thought about more than anything else, we did think about relationships. We considered that. Both community-police relationships, community-community relationships. But we used the data. And we looked at this many different ways. Our analysts looked at this many ways, looking at the data in keeping neighborhoods together and not separating further neighborhoods. The data about calls for service and crimes, the data told us which neighborhoods had to move to levelize it so that the Northeast District would look and feel the same way the Northern, the Northwest, and all the other 6 districts would look and feel at any time of the day. So it was really data-driven, not personality-driven, although we did look at keeping the neighborhoods together. The thing we didn't want to do is split the neighborhood, so to keep a neighborhood together, sometimes, in some of the cases, an entire neighborhood shifted to a different district.
And then I would just add to that, like knowing that neighborhood very well and working with it for such a long time, I know that they'll be able to build a relationship with any police commander, any police district. And for example, the other neighborhood that would would jump out to you on that map of going in Easton is Bella Edison. Even though Bella Edison has been in the Northeast forever, you know that it's physically closer to the Easton District office. And it's really about the people in the neighborhoods who are great, and about the command and the officers there, and the building those relationships that we're going to have to do, because we have seen this right now. There are people who used to be for me, for example, I'm getting a new congressperson, right? I've never been in the 7th Congressional District, but I am now, and I'm going to be great to have Congressman Mfume. Folks who were in the 43rd District are now in the 45th Legislative District. We know that this conversation happens every 10 years, and we just have to make sure that we are keeping strong relationships where they're already strong and building new ones to make them strong.
Speaking on crime, Commissioner Harrison, I know you were there yesterday, but Mayor, looking for your response, we heard from Councilman Eric Costello that he doesn't believe the crime plan is working, and he's wondering how long it's going to take until everybody sees that it's not working and there's a pivot or a change.
Yeah, I will tell you what I would say to the councilman to his face. We pivot and change every day. The crime plan changes every day. We adjust as criminals adjust, as the environment adjusts, and we're going to continue to do that each and every day. But I think also it will be great to see other parts of the criminal justice system brought in for a hearing at City Council as well.
What other parts specifically?
All of them.
Mayor Scott, I know that today the Comprehensive Violence Prevention report came out from ONSI. Going through it, I noticed that Safe Streets is mentioned 3 times throughout this entire report. Does that signal that your administration is looking to pivot away from the program and invest in other community violence intervention programs?
No, we're not pivoting from Safe Streets. Safe Streets is at this point, a nationally renowned violence intervention program. It's well known by everybody. We don't have to mention Safe Streets 100 times because everyone knows that I support and believe in Safe Streets. But we are also going to be investing in other community violence intervention groups, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to be working with any and everybody at every community level to intervene in violence.
I just had a quick follow-up. Looking at it, though, you talk about these mediations and the intervention programs. We know that Safe Streets workers can't be everywhere at all times across the entire city. What types of specific training programs are you looking to put into these communities if Safe Streets isn't the only program the city will be backing?
Yeah, I think, Mackenzie, what I will say to you is that you know Baltimore well enough, you've been here long enough to know that every neighborhood is different, right? So what works in Park Heights won't work in Grove Park. It won't work in Ashburn. It won't work in East Baltimore. So those things are community driven. That's why we have this grant process. That's why folks from those communities, right? When you think about the great work that folks like Mr. C and the folks at Rose Street have been doing in East Baltimore for years. When you think about Brother Eric and EB in North Baltimore, all of those folks do different things, from job training, from mediation, from intervening in violence, to figuring out, to even some folks are helping to relocate people. It's a different thing for everyone. You cannot, when you're talking about situations of beef that are different from person to person, and the reasons are different, and the neighborhood environments are different, there is no silver bullet. There is no cookie cutter approach that's going to work. That's why when you're talking about community driven, it's going to be driven by the members of those community and how they see how we should work with them in their community to resolve violence.
Okay. Today, a video, I guess the officer video came out about the shooting that was happening over in Northeast Baltimore, Frankfurt, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to stay safe. Yeah. Anyway, I was told to ask your thoughts on the officer video that came out about the shooting that happened over in Northeast on Sinclair and Frankfurt Avenue. Just your thoughts.
Well, I think right now are you referring to the investigation by the...
I'm sorry, surveillance video. I thought it was officer video. It's surveillance video. Your thoughts?
I have not seen any surveillance video at this time, so I'm not able to speak about that because what you may have seen I haven't seen yet, or not today.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, and you haven't seen?
I haven't seen it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.